Hey guys, Zomfox here, and today we're going to be talking about the Arena Football League. Well, more exactly, we're going to be talking about the Arena Football League officially dying once again. Now, depending on how you considered their first bankruptcy, this is the third time the Arena Football League has, well, died. Again, the first time was a really weird one, and then they had their second, which is the real bankruptcy where the league fully stopped playing, and then there's this new iteration that has already failed. Now, this was a weird league in basically everything that went down. From it actually having a season with a bunch of teams to losing half the team during the season. And now the fact is that all the teams have left to form their own league, the Arena Football 1. Now, we're going to have to also ask what can we learn from this league? So, we need to first understand what went wrong. Now, the first thing to note is the Arena Football League's initial teams. This image is going to be the single lasting image of alt football league fans on why this league failed. This was supposed to be the markets where the 16 teams played in, and as you can clearly see comparing those 16 to the 16 that actually played, this is nowhere near what ended up happening. A bunch of these teams played in far different places than those markets. We heard a lot about some of those markets having mayors and people in there saying they were never contacted about getting a team in there. And apparently, the Arena Football League just kind of expected to be able to pick and choose a market and put a team there, which is not the case. The fact is that those 16 teams, yeah, that was a bad look. Yes, we got a couple of teams here and there, but I mean, there was a St. Louis team? No. Was there a Colorado team? No. Right, and you can do that for a bunch of them. Yes, there were teams. There were the Predators in Orlando. There were the Soul in Philadelphia. There were teams in some of the states they mentioned, like a Tennessee. But overall, when you actually look at it, this was a massive failure, all things considered. This was a horrific look for the league because it was about like a week after this came out. It might not have even been a week. We had heard the initial reports that some cities had not even heard about getting a team in their city. And so this was the failure. Now, of course, the amount of issues that happened during the season was huge. And look, I'm not going to cover all of them. The fact is, if I were to cover every issue, this would be a far too long video. But some of the more notable ones, you have the NFL Network deal completely falling through. Games were supposed to be played on NFL Network above all other areas. That would have been a very easily accessible channel. Well, compared to everything else, because even though they had their Arena Football Live, there was a bunch of issues with some of these streaming areas that just didn't work. But the NFL deal, number one, would have been horrific. They wouldn't have gotten any sort of ad revenue or anything from it. And number two, didn't happen because of the fact that there was reports that certain people never got paid, questions about the truth. All that matters is it didn't end up happening, so that was a huge blow to them. Now, another issue, these 16 teams. As you can see, they ended up finishing with 8 teams. They had to reorganize the league during the season. The Oregon Black Bears got expelled from the league, but the other 7 teams that didn't make it all folded. Most of them folded after 2 games, but then you did have a team like the Rapid City Marshals who did last 5 games but still did fold. And then, of course, the Iowa Rampage, the first team, they folded after 1 game. So, a very bad look. And yes, I mean, the West Texas Desert Hawks also did it last a very long time, lasting 8 games. But the fact is, half the league basically got, shut down. They folded. Now, yes, again, there was the one exception with a team that got expelled, but the league as a whole saw half their teams essentially fold during the season. Now, this isn't too shocking. When you have arenas like the one pictured down below, yeah, you're probably not going to last that long. Having to play in an arena where you have awful padding being placed and you have a goalpost that is just horrifically constructed and not even straight, yeah, that's a bad look for the league. Now, you also have issues that happen with payment, right? Early on May 3rd, right, there was all those sources breaking that, Minnesota Myth players weren't getting paid or getting meal vouchers, and Lee Hutton, the commissioner, was supposed to be giving them and never did. And that was just one of the many instances of him failing as commissioner, because despite being supposedly unable to be overthrown, he got overthrown and replaced by Jeff Fisher. So, it wasn't good. there was a bunch of issues. The only thing that really ended up happening that was considered good was the championship game with the Outlaws and Firebirds, the brawl at the mall. That was pretty much the only good thing that happened during the season. Everything else was just an overall failure. Now, of course, we have to look at the fact that the league is dead. Now, despite it not officially going bankrupt or anything, essentially what happened is all 8 teams that survived decided to leave and form their own league, the Arena Football 1. You can look at the entire press release on your screen, but the more important thing is the fact that they put out on their Twitter account that they were going to answer any questions that were asked, and then at the JPN 23 asked, will the new rebrand acknowledge the past 30 years that the past AFL has had, like former players, franchises, arena bowls, and all that? Arena Football 1 responded saying this is not a rebrand. This is its own established league, so it will not be taking anything from the prior leagues, meaning that even this past championship will not be considered if this ends up being fully true. So that's a pretty big deal. They just said, we're good. The Arena Football League, for a while, was considered the third league. They were like the TNA of football. For those of you wrestling fans, right? TNA/Impact has always been that like third brand whenever there's 2 major players, WWE and whether it's WCW, AEW. They've always been that like third player. Arena Football League was that to the NFL and CFL. But then, the 2000s came, that had issues, then the late 2010s came, it folded, and then when it came back, it was this hyped moment, but everything just went wrong, and now it's officially dead again. And so that leads us to the ultimate point. What can we learn? Well, the first thing is to not rush to have 10 plus teams. Look, the Arena Football League or the Arena Football 1 has already added like 3 expansion teams at the time of me recording this, which is the day this is going to come out, though, maybe they came up with later. The point is, though, they have teams that are already pretty much established that are going to last, and it feels like they're doing a much more selective job in who they add. But rushing to have 10 plus teams is a huge risk because that's a ton of money that you have to spend, and that's also a ton of owners if you're in an Arena Football League setting, where you have to actually have owners, not like the UFL, where you have to hope that everybody works out well. Now, another thing is having a good broadcasting group in place. As I mentioned, the broadcasting was terrible. The Arena Football Live Network had a bunch of issues. The NFL Network deal falling through was terrible. You need to have good broadcasting groups, right? That's the one thing the UFL has done a great job in, having most of their games on ABC, ESPN, or Fox. Have great and reliable leadership. Lee Hutton was a horrid commissioner. That was terrible. Now, the UFL, it's pretty obvious to most fans that Moose, Brandon, and Garcia really do care about the league, but The Rock is a very unreliable leader and a not good leader. We saw it especially with the U.S. Army deal falling through. So, hopefully we can get some, changes there. Have good stadium/arena deals. This is obvious. Don't play in a place that's absolutely terrible unless it's the only thing that you can, right? Unless it's the last option, you need to be in good places, right? This is a big issue. We're talking about the UFL now. We're waiting on the Michigan Panthers to get a stadium. We're hoping they go back to Ford Field because it is the best stadium for them to play in. Now, with the Houston Roughnecks, right, we looked at how they played in Rice Stadium this past year. They weren't allowed to have any sort of branding on the field, so it looked terrible whenever they were playing on it. Now they're going to go back to TDECU Stadium, which is a much better stadium, and we're already expecting an increase of the attendance by well over 1,000 per game just because they're in a better stadium. And then number 5 is always have a backup plan. The AFL had to kind of do everything on the fly, but you need to have a legit backup plan. Now again, the UFL had to use Rice as a backup plan, but overall you need to have something. In case a worst case scenario happens, have some sort of backup alternative, whether it be a different broadcasting company or group, whether it be a different stadium to play in. You need to have some sort of backup plan, and the league proved it. But overall, that'll do it. This has been ZomFox. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified as soon as I upload any videos. Again, I have a couple more really cool videos coming out the next couple weeks that are going to come out basically on Fridays. I have my first dedicated AAF video as well as my first What If video coming out. So be on the lookout for those. Again, make sure you have the bell on and be notified about them. If you've been a fan of this channel for a while, think about becoming a community member for 99 cents a month. You'll get an exclusive video every month, team emojis, and many other benefits. And as always, guys, have a great night.